It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show on your screens tonight. It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show for your home delight. We're talking about Age of Sigmar and anything else that is cool. Talking about Warhammer Fantasy, it's easy to learn the rules. Andy and Remington, Andy and Remington, Andy and Remington Show.
Welcome one and all. It's time for yet another red hot, spicy, tingly edition of the Andy and Rem Show, episode 179. And as you can see from the thumbnail, I have a guest many years in the making. And as I unmute the guests for this show, you're able to hear the sounds not only Remington but also Shawn of Blue Table Painting fame. And he does have two full shoulders despite this crop job in the thumbnail. So let's get rid of that thumbnail right now. And there we are. The audience can see everybody. Finally, Mr. Shawn, we've got you on the show. We tried it 6 years ago. We got 2 seconds of your face. I think you got a word out and then put out. And then for some reason
hello?
we just forgot
Am
to
I
try again.
on?
Shawn, you are live.
To the world.
All right, sounds good. You guys missed out on my comments about bucktooth ladies earlier off screen. So maybe they'll bring up the topic again.
Shawn, may I say?
Hey, Blue Table fans! That was 18% enthusiasm level.
We'll see if we can build up that percentage throughout the show.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Because
if I
ramp it up to 80%, your head will explode. Like that Tenacious D song. Master Exploder, was that it?
I don't know, Shawn, but we're so thrilled you came on the show. We've been waiting to get you on for a long time, and
have you now?
Yeah, yes, I have actually. So we've been doing this show for I don't know 5-6 years now already. And before that time, I was just an avid YouTube watcher of Warhammer stuff, and you were probably the most watched channel of all of them.
Well, let's get it right. We built this show in the foundations in like the muddy trench that had been dug by the likes of Blue Table Painting back in the day. The pioneers of wargaming YouTube.
That is standing on the shoulders, standing on the shoulder of a giant. Right here today. So, Shawn, welcome.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. You've rowed out to Cancelled Island to have some crab and seaweed with me. How nice of you.
Very tasty it is.
What's going on, guys? Do you wanna give me some guidance or tell me about your lives? What's going on?
Oh,
All right, Andy, you want to introduce yourself?
Not really. Like episode 179.
Well, well, that's Andy. He is a war gamer, a creator. I wouldn't go as far as to say an innovator, such as yourself, Shawn. I would put myself in that category with you, entrepreneur, war gamer. A thought, a philosopher of the game and of the art. So that's where we stand. That's where we stand. We saw a gap in the market for Age of Sigmar when it come out, and we jumped on that train, baby. And problem, and then soon, other people jumped on our train and kind of took it over. But we've somehow managed to keep the carriage chugging along, and we've managed to get it all the way to Utah to pick you up, my friend.
Well, I'm glad you did. It's an honor and a delight, and I always had a great opinion of Andy. He seemed like somebody who was always speaking his mind and really being himself. And you don't always find that.
No.
So thank you. That's really great.
No. And speaking of entrepreneurship in wargaming and fantasy, Obviously, we don't have too much time on this show, and you've got such a story to tell. But maybe in a few words, maybe you could tell us, your journey into becoming a YouTube celebrity, if you like, in wargaming.
Well, I'm not a celebrity now, that's for sure.
You are to me.
Once a
In
celebrity, always a
2007,
celebrity.
okay, I'll take it. I say yes to you then. Yeah, right now my channel is pretty much like the diehards. You know, like you pop popcorn and those kernels at the bottom that just won't pop no matter how much heat you apply to them. That's my channel. And those guys aren't going anywhere. And that's where I want it to be. I've actually been repositioning myself the last few years to be in a place where I could just do or say or be whatever I wanted, and it really wouldn't matter in terms of how my company was going and whatnot. And I forgot the question. It was
So
yeah,
you're a
I
fan of
lost it.
I don't know, D&D maybe, and you got into
Hmm.
putting on games, and then I know you got into miniatures and miniature painting, miniature wargaming, and then you started running your own shop with a group of friends that you got together to sort of invest in that idea. And then you got in touch with Games Workshop, who you started doing business with, maybe, and you were selling some of the miniatures as well as many other. Am I on the right lines here? Am I doing good?
No, not at all.
Oh, bollocks.
No. Okay, well, first off, I started my shop in my garage in California in 2003, and it was just me by myself. And I didn't know if it was going to go anywhere. And then I started getting a couple of local housewives to do some of my prep work.
Nice.
And then when I moved to Utah, then I actually started forming a little crew.
Oh yeah.
And in 2007, I started making videos on YouTube. I think I've got 4 or 5,000 up now, and I'm
Nice.
still making them. I'm supposed to put up 2 videos a day, but it's probably more like 10 videos a month. And so I'm still going, and I got a great crew now. I'm in Salt Lake City, which is a capital of Utah. So a lot of really great artists out here, and I live my life in peace.
Nice.
That's,
So I mean, I have kind of the history of Luke Skywalker. You know, something great happened, and then my temple blew up about 3 times, and now I live by myself on an island.
that's something you said a little while ago about being yourself. Now, one of the things that people
Yeah.
ask me, particularly a few years ago, once they saw that I'd met you at Adepticon, they asked me, is Shawn really like that in real life? Surely nobody can keep up that kind of energy when the camera's not rolling. And I can assure you that if it's an act, then it's either an all-day act, which surely no one could keep up, or maybe
Yeah.
maybe it's like whenever you're out in public and you have to go back in and just plug yourself into a wall to charge yourself up at the end of the day. Something along those lines.
Well, when I go to check out at the grocery store, the cashier is always like, "Oh, this guy." They
So,
like me at Trader Joe's. They're pretty happy out at Trader Joe's.
so Shawn, just before we went on air, you were telling us that your miniature painting company was one of the first, and there wasn't many around. Well, that were active, but yours soon became one of the largest. So maybe you could tell us about that journey.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, I never expected things to go well. And at the beginning, if someone got hired on, I would say, hey, don't depend on this money because I don't know if I'm going to be here in a couple months. That was like '05, right? And from 2004 to 2013, we had 45% exponential growth per year
Wow.
without fail. And it was crazy. I think at the height, I had 30 employees. And I was at the grocery store one day, and this guy came up and he was like, "Hey, Shawn, how's it going?" Da, da, da. And he was like really excited. And I was like, "I'm so sorry. Have we met?" He's like, "Shawn, I've been working at your company for 3 months."
Okay.
And I was like, "Oh, wow, this is really like beyond me now. Like I've created something that has a life independent of itself."
Yeah.
And so, long story short, just grew and grew. And
Yeah.
frankly, I'm not that great of a person. Like, I definitely see my flaws, and I was riding the tiger. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know I had never run a company with people in it, and I
Yeah.
had big plans too. In the conference room, we had this big display thing where I was ramping it up. I was making plans to have up to 200 people.
Yeah.
And now, of course, looking back at it, I'm just like, oh, more people, not better.
Yeah.
So, like anything, you just have to alter your life plans to fit who you are, who you really are.
John,
And then, of course,
did
yeah,
something
go ahead.
did something fundamentally change also in the wargaming community, in the wargaming world, in the way miniatures were being painted as well? You know, or do you feel like your enterprise just sort of hit the zenith? You know?
Well, if you look at a company is often an extension of the person that created it. And Blue Table Painting really was like my big mecha robot with me at the middle of it. So I don't think it was external. I think it was internal. And if you look at the timing of everything, and in terms of Blue Table Painting now getting smaller, right now I have 10 to 15 artists on tap, and they're super part time.
Yeah.
So I would say it's at about 25% in terms of number of projects being completed. It's at about 25% of where it was at the height.
Yeah.
And everybody looks at those years as like these, golden days, and they were in many ways, but not necessarily. Like, I
Yeah.
really like it how it is now.
Sure.
I would not, if someone were like, press this button, go back to 2013, I would say no, thank you. Or I would go back to 2013 and immediately make changes. So to answer your question, not external,
Yeah.
definitely internal. Like, that's when I was talking to my wife about getting divorced,
Yeah.
and we were 20 years into it, and I was like, in many ways, lost and found. I mean, speaking personally,
Yeah.
like, I was losing everything personally, and I was a Mormon for many, many, many years,
Yeah.
devout,
Yeah.
and I was just leaving the church at the exact same time.
Wow.
So leaving the church, leaving my wife, and you can't have something happening on the inside and not have it sort of be represented on the outside as well.
That must have been
Big changes.
so stressful, all those factors going on, plus running this company and being responsible for all those workers. And I remember when you first moved into the massive facility,
Mm.
and I remember watching
I
your
do miss
journey.
that.
I mean, that was like you had like people whose jobs it was just to check the quality of stuff, right? And then you had people that were boxing stuff, and it was this cottage industry that had just gone mass production, right? And I remember hearing about your vision at the time, and it just you know what, Sean, I got to say, although those times, by the sound of it, ended up becoming some kind of rebirth almost. For me at the time, I was really at a low in my life, and watching your enthusiasm and your light, and giving so much love to the world, it really helped me. Honestly speaking, it really, really helped me. So, before anything else, I've just got to thank you because you did make a big difference to a lot of people, including me. And even if you took some personal um, stress and everything. I mean, maybe it'll give you some comfort to know that your energy really had an effect across the world. So that's my
Oh, thank you.
there you go.
Well, you're welcome, Rem, and you're welcome, world. I really appreciate that. And I still have that enthusiasm inside. Andy's right. It comes out naturally all throughout the day. I'd say I'm more tempered nowadays. I mean, I'm 52. I've been running Blue Table Painting for 18 years. So I've definitely changed as a person. And I would love to continue influencing people. But at this time, my channel's pretty modest. And,
But what I liked
but we'll
about
see.
your channel, it wasn't just sort of promoting your business and giving people a sort of a ticket to ride on your journey. but you'd also do rants about life and spirituality and about looking for finding good things in your life. And so I love
Mhm.
that positivity, and you don't really find that anywhere else, right? Well, I couldn't, and I got that kick from watching your channel while I was painting as well. so,
Well,
so
thank
yeah,
you very much. Maybe you
yeah.
guys will inspire me. I think some days I have this inspiration. I think, you know what, Shawn, you need to get on the camera for an hour a day and just talk about whatever, and be that channel like the Truman Show, that people can turn it on every day and hear this voice and hear your thoughts about things. And yeah, I think I should do that.
Of
Well,
the
I
of
think
the
you're very brave.
of the main pillars of the wargaming YouTube community that were around when I started looking into that kind of thing, videos were popping up being suggested. I'd been out of wargaming for 8 years or something, and there was you, there's the likes of Beasts of War, Mini Wargaming, as all these main pillars, but your particular pillar felt more like a glimpse into your real life rather than a polished kind of product. And I think
Right.
that made it unique at the time as
I mean,
you were definitely one of the bigger channels then.
It was everything. You had battle reports. I loved your battle reports. I remember one where you had the Dark Elves and you had the Black Guard, right? And
Oh yeah, Blackguard.
there was one or two blackguards that just wouldn't die. They just kept surviving. And you had just these crazy ideas, like you were going to do an undead you were going to do an undead army, right? But it was going to be made entirely of zombies. And to get the
Mhm.
points you needed, you would have had to have painted like hundreds of these models, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and look, I mean, it's just crazy stuff, man. I thought it was great. I loved it, and yeah. So yeah, there's nothing else like that now. I don't think.
Really.
I don't think so.
All right, because I look at all these channels. Um, I can't remember the names right now, like Play On or something like that. But these I mean, they're so
Oh
refined
yeah.
and they have
Oh yeah.
such good editing that
Oh
I
yeah.
just like kind of throw my hands up. I'm like, yeah, there's no way to catch up to that.
Yeah. That's
But you
true.
are right that you can give something that doesn't exist elsewhere by simply being yourself. Because I don't exist elsewhere,
Yeah.
and I think that's something I've always had is personality, like
Yeah.
that natural enthusiasm level.
Yeah.
Just and yeah, I don't think you see that in many places.
Yeah.
Even creating battle reports, just the entire concept of it wasn't particularly big back then, and it takes people who maybe don't know exactly what they're doing editing wise and production wise to come in and create a lot of content for then later people with a bit of film expertise come along and say, hey, I could do something like that and make it really fancy. And if you hadn't
Well,
laid
that's what I
those
would love.
foundations.
I would love to have somebody with those skills just have me come to play the battle report.
Yeah.
I would do that all day long.
I mean,
And
here's
just give me a copy of it to put on my channel and then do whatever they're going to do with it.
I think what we found, Shawn, is the consistency. Because you might find someone that's enthusiastic and they might do one battle report, two battle reports, three. But finding consistency, I've found that really difficult in myself.
Mhm.
Just we did this as a weekly show for a few years, and even that was quite a task with full-time jobs and families and whatnot. So how you managed to do 2 videos a day, I don't know.
Well, I don't. If you go and look, it's about once every 2 or 3 days I'll put something on. But it
Right.
is consistent. Like I've been doing that for 14 years now.
Yeah.
So, it's on there. But the thing is, my motivations are different.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I was flailing my arms because we had to make payroll, we had to make the sales, and the enthusiasm was real, but the desperation was real as well. And that constant stress sort of grinded down my soul.
Yeah.
And now I have something where every time I think of like doing something, I'm just like, oh well, I guess I don't have to do that
Yeah.
because I've already won. I already have what I
Yeah.
want. Like I'd like it to go up from in terms of percentage from 25 to 35. But
Yeah.
that's it. Like there's a cap to what I'm doing
Yeah.
where I love my life. I get up whenever I want. I just have the orders kind of naturally coming in. I have no advertising.
Wow.
I went to a local convention just for fun recently, and the guy was like, "Oh, can I have your card?" And I'm like, "Oh, how sweet! You have a card." And I'm like thinking to myself, I don't need a card anymore. I don't need to.
Yeah.
I already have a client base, and my client base is so solid right now that it wouldn't matter what happened. Like I don't know. I can't think of. I can think
Yeah.
of several
Sure.
examples of horror. I could do something horrible, let's say, and it wouldn't matter. I'd still have the same amount of orders the next day.
Sure.
And I live at peace. I have a new wife now. We're married 2 years. She's gorgeous and wonderful and attentive.
Yeah.
And I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I have my 4 kids who are wonderful. My 20-year-old son lives with me now and paints and works on the company with me. And by the way, he's a better painter than me, that bastard.
Do you get to paint?
Um,
Do you get to
oh
paint these
yeah,
days? No.
yeah. Sometimes if things are slow, I hop on the line and I start painting. But most of the time, I'm just painting things that I want, which is another great thing. Like
Yeah.
I just paint figures for fun, usually D&D figures,
Yeah.
and I'm having a good time. I'm playing my Necrons, and I paint what I want. I get up when I want, and I don't have a lot of stress. It's
Sean,
really wonderful.
Sean, do you have a personal collection of models
Yes.
that you're not that
Yeah,
you don't want to sell?
most of them are role playing figures.
Right.
And I painted most of them just personally by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do dream of having a larger studio again, to have the giant room and display cases everywhere and put all my stuff out again. That'd be really great. And that was a dream from early on in the company. It was called the World Room. And I remember calling in like my little tiny staff, and we were in like this 800 square foot office all cramped on the second floor. And I was like, okay, everybody, someday we're going to have a room, and we're going to have 8 tables set up at all times. We're going to have great terrain on them and play whenever we want.
Sean, I think
And that did happen.
Sean, naturally, for what you just said, it reminds me of Valhalla. And this is such a wonderful thing that you put together. And from across the Atlantic, I was like, man, I wish I could go to Sean's Valhalla. You know, so maybe is Valhalla still a thing?
Ooh, can I talk about that?
Yeah, man.
Because I'd like to talk about the future, because there is something that I want to do. My ultimate goal is to have permanent Valhalla, a place up in the woods that's gorgeous, this lodge. And I imagine it with some kind of waterfall nearby. And you're going to go up there, and I can have out people just because I want. The money to run the whole thing is already just there from other channels. And if I just feel like having you two out, and maybe I can even pay for your plane tickets, I just have people out just because. And I imagine artists coming out to work on projects with me, like not paid, and the projects aren't paid either, just to do something fun and collaborative.
Wow.
And have them out for 2, 3, 6 months just to live there. No rent, gorgeous food being cooked up every day. Rivendell. I want Rivendell with war games. That's my dream.
Nice.
So permanent Valhalla. In the meantime, I'm gunning for something I call Ultimate Dungeons and Dragons, which is to have one of the smaller Valhallas like we had in like 2011, 2012 up in Sundance, maybe 12 or 18 people, and I can just have them up and run a game. And that's, by the way, that's coming soon.
Wow, man.
Now, what happened to Valhalla? In 2014, and remember, this is the year like everything was kind of going down. I had my last Valhalla, and I think I had like 40 people out to it. And I think Frontline was out there. The one right before that, Mini Wargaming were still coming out. And I mean, it was all Band of Brothers. So anyway, but in 2015, guys, I got to tell you, I did not feel like doing Valhalla. Because I mean, I was punching through bricks for many years to get my dream off the ground. And every Valhalla was a lot, because it just wasn't there quite yet. So in 2015, early in 2015, I think in March or April, I met my now lovely wife, and she had relatives in New Mexico. So we went to New Mexico to go meet them, and I was like, "Huh, who lives in New Mexico? Ah, Wargamer Girl. I don't know if you guys know her or about her. You should."
I used to watch her
And so we
stuff,
went
yeah.
to visit her and her husband, who we had invited to Valhalla every time as guest stars. And so we went out to dinner with them, and they would not freaking let up about Valhalla. Sorry, I'm so shaky, by the way. I'm holding my phone up.
The
That's low
excitement.
tech. Yes. Okay, so anyway, they wouldn't let up. When is it? Are you going to do it this year? Where are you going to have it? And I was like, guys, I just don't feel like this. So they approached me and they said, hey, if you're not going to do Valhalla, we want to do it. And so I passed the torch to Miranda. She's renamed it Valhalla in the Fall. And I call it Fallhalla for short. And she's been running it very successfully every year. I think this is year number 6. Now, I got something out of the deal for handing it over to her and giving her the forms and the client list. And that is, I get a free ticket. So
Wow.
I go up every year, honored guest, no cost for it. And since Jonah, my son, has turned 18 and now he's 20, we've gone up the last 2 years, and they put us up in high style, and Miranda's been very wonderful and true to her word. And it's great. I get to go up, have all the benefits that I wanted from it, but absolutely none of the responsibility, none
Shawn,
of the stress of worrying about it.
Shawn, I think from what I saw of Valhalla, the video clips back when you were running it, right? I remember seeing the amazing food, and you had a whole you had an army of cooks, and it was just like such. How do they emulate that? Do they emulate that? Because it's not just about the wargaming, is it? It's about the scenery, the company, and of course the food.
Oh yeah, she's doing a great job. Probably better than what we were doing.
Awesome,
She
man.
has more people. Miranda really brings connections. Like, she's very well connected in the community, and she just doing a great job.
Wow.
But it's autofill now. Like, they don't have to do any advertising for it. They just pretty much almost the same people come up every year. There's an upper limit, like 60 people is the most middle-aged nerds you want around.
Oh god.
And
I've got
yeah,
no I haven't
it's
got
like a
many
little
years
mini
left.
convention.
I mean, Sean, so 2014, 2015 was a very what's the word? Tumultuous year then, right? But it was
Yeah.
also the end of the old world, right? And Warhammer Fantasy completely changed. So it's a nice link because that's when our show kind of started. What did you think of Age of Sigmar coming about and the death of the old world?
Right. Well, first I want to talk about Warhammer Fantasy. You know what? Hold on. Let me just put an end cap on what we were
Yeah,
talking about. So Valhalla exists. It's once a year in October. I want to eventually do a permanent Valhalla. That's kind of my big dream.
love it.
And soon I'm going to be doing Ultimate Fantasy role playing, probably in Sundance. And I'll be looking to fill 12 to 18 spots for that. So just to plug my own thing. And I'm going to try and just do it easily for my own fan base. See if I can get 12 guys to come up and have me run them through a Dungeons and Dragons adventure
That's
for a week.
in person, not online.
Yep, all miniatures, all terrain, catered food, everything Valhalla esque. Okay, so back to whatever's. Back in '97, I got into Warhammer 40K, and then the next year, a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, we're going to do Warhammer Fantasy." So we all picked our armies. I picked High Elves. My buddies picked Skaven and Orcs. And so we played Warhammer Fantasy Second Edition. And so I am a diehard Warhammer Fantasy player. I love it. I love moving the bricks around. There's a definite charm to that. However, in the end of times, or what is called the end days, as you were mentioning, there was a practical problem with Warhammer Fantasy. people were calling me to do armies, but you needed like bricks of like 50 guys. And that cost so much. Like the quotes I was giving people were just here. They were just beyond what people could do. And shelf space for retailers, there were intrinsic problems with the game. Everybody already had their models. They're having a hard time selling new things. And so blowing up the world was kind of what they had to do. And frankly, I love Age of Sigmar. I've enjoyed playing it. I love the models. They're worth having just to have them because they're so cool looking. I played probably 3 years ago was the last time I actually played. But I do love it. I follow it, and I get models from it to add to my role-playing game collection.
Nice, man.
That's an interesting insight there, because I was going to ask you whether the old world blowing up and Age of Sigmar coming along and how that affected your business, because presumably quite a bit of your business would have been large Warhammer Fantasy armies. So if there's one thing people really don't want to paint, it's 300 rats. So they're going to be the first people that are in there finding someone else to paint those models for them. And then when this new rule set came along, where it said maybe you don't need the 300 rats anymore, maybe you can just have 3 big monsters instead as an army, and whether that kind of adversely affected your business. But the way you're saying it, it sounded like people were hesitant to even commission those massive armies. So did you notice a difference in the kind of projects you were getting around that time?
Yeah, now that you mention it, I'm like, oh, maybe that was like a factor in a little bit of decline in revenues. But yeah, obviously, yes, I had a lot less. I didn't have any Warhammer Fantasy armies after that. But I did get some Age of Sigmar business. I still get some in proportion. I mean, back in the day, it was 70% 40K. It was always that. And then about 20% Warhammer Fantasy and 10% other. And now the other actually is filling up that other 30%. Like I get a lot of commissions now for Marvel Crisis Protocol. Star Wars Legion has been great. And so these other games really are filling that gap.
Nice. Shawn, if
but
you
I do,
could...
like if you look on my channel, I just finished like this 10,000 point Soulblight Gravelords army with terrain and everything.
Nice.
So
I was gonna ask you, Shawn, like, what army would you like to collect if you were wanting to get an army for yourself for Age of Sigmar?
Oh, I've actually thought about this. And my original army was High Elves. So, and back in '98, they had a big 5-pointed half star on their forehead.
Yeah.
And Rem knows where I'm going with this. I wanted not blue elves, I wanted to make green elves. And that star looked just like a marijuana leaf after I painted all those High Elf spearmen. And so my buddies called them the High Elves. And all right. Yeah, that never gets old. So Lumineth Gravelord. God dang it. Lumineth Realm Lords would be what I would do. The Cruel Boys have some sweet hotness coming out.
Nice.
And that'd be great. I've always loved more the role-playing aspect, so
sure.
I'd obviously prefer to do like the what is it called, Path to Glory or whatever.
Yeah. What sort of a player would you class yourself, Shawn? Do you think you're all out attack? Are you thoughtful? Are you patient? Are you tactical? How would you describe yourself?
I'm a space cadet.
It's like
and
me.
I come, and this is the game of remembering things.
Yeah.
So recently I took a run with my Necrons to learn how to play more competitively. And that obviously didn't go very well. But I got to stick with it. But to answer your question, I come from the tradition of the Dungeon Master, which is I'm not there to win. I'm there to entertain the other people. So I subconsciously come to the table with that mindset. Like, I don't mind losing. I'm really there to make sure the other person has a good time.
Yeah.
And that's where, and you see the role playing when I'm doing my battle reports, you see the role playing, like infusing a personality into these units and having fun with it.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if I'm playing a game and it's not going well, I declare a moral victory. Like, I'm like, okay, if my commander kills your commander in this combat, then I declare it a moral victory for me. And so I'm having a good time no matter what.
Nice,
So
man.
let's touch on a few of the current topics then and get your take on them. So first of all, Warhammer Plus.
Mm.
Are you a
I
subscriber
wish
to
him the
Warhammer
best.
Plus?
Not yet. I wish him the best, and I think if we all just wait and don't tear it apart, it may turn into something great.
Shawn, there's such a lot of backlash.
That's my take.
There's such a lot of backlash with it. I'm a subscriber. I think it's great. I think like any new idea, it needs time to build its content and whatnot. And there's so many haters out there, very vocal haters, especially on YouTube. I mean, and these are getting hundreds of thousands of views, and they're so negative and saying, it's a rip off and they're this and that. Games Workshop, similar, very similar, right, to the sort of things we were hearing in 2014 about how Games Workshop so terrible, this and that. And then, as a shareholder of Games Workshop myself, I can see just how successful Age of Sigmar really was. Just look at the share price going up over the last 5 years, right? But it seems like those haters are back out in force against Warhammer Plus, and also because Games Workshop have sort of clamped down on what they might call illegal content creators using their IP. So, what's your thoughts on all this mess at the minute?
I'm going to take a little left turn and address the real issue. The horribleness exists inside of human beings. It's already there. If something awful comes out of somebody in criticism, where it just the haters, as you say, that already exists inside the person. And we're living in the age of the internet, where everybody is getting more of a voice than they have in the last 200 years. Before, the common person really didn't have a voice. What could you do? Run an ad in the local newspaper? You didn't have that. Now everybody can just get on Twitter and just sort of blast their awful vomit in every direction. And as a race, meaning the human race, as humans, we have not adapted yet to the technology of the internet. And new technologies are coming out. And it takes 50 to 100 years for human beings to adapt to a significant new technology. And we're not there yet. We're only like 25 years into the internet, and an internet that is evolving in the way it functions, artificial intelligences. Pretty soon, AIs will be able to, with a press of a button, will be able to make photorealistic profiles with opinions and just go on and just wreck social media. You won't even know it's real anymore. Like a whole show like this can just be made up from artificial intelligence 10 to 20 years from now.
Don't give them
and you
any
won't
ideas.
know what's going on. Yeah, well, it's already happening. So to answer your question, Rim, I don't pay much attention to people saying awful things. The only thing I hear is, well, I'm an awful person and this is what's inside me. So say something positive, support something that you like, and I think in the end, that's going to win out. That in the end, people will understand the nature of the technology of which they're a part. Like we're carrying these incredibly sophisticated machines in our pockets, our cell phones, and we're not done. We're not done dealing with the fallout from that. So anyway, that's what's going on, and I think you're going to find people wanting to have more real experiences, and something really beautiful is going to come of it. I have a very optimistic view of the future. It's going to be wonderful.
Nice, man. Well, a cool answer, man. Thank you.
Now, we've been staring at the same picture for the last 40 minutes, and it's a space marine and a vampire. Anyone got any thoughts on these?
Yeah. Well, there's a meme going around I think, where the guy in the last one he says he has bats in his pants.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
I
Yeah.
mean, the Space
What do
Marine.
you mean? The models are cool. Games Workshop's doing a good job. But check out Etsy and 3D printing. Like there's some stuff coming out that's crazy, and it's just going to break the industry that things can be printed on demand for cheaply in people's apartments and garages. It's
Do you think
it's
3D
insane.
printing is taking over then? It's not a fad. It's not the way we envisage the way 3D printing is going to be. It's not going to veer off in a totally different direction the way technology sometimes does. It's just going to be as it is now, but bigger. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. In 1984, my 7th grade junior high yearbook had an article. It was entitled Computers, Wave of the Future or Passing Fad. Because at the time, in the mid 80s, we didn't know. Only nerds had these things. And 3D printing is the exact same thing. It's the way it's going to be insane. You're going to go to a car dealership and they're going to 3D print a car out of metals and everything right there, custom spec.
Do you think games?
And it's going to be cheap.
A Games
and they're going
Workshop,
to 3D print pharmaceuticals too.
Yeah. Well, it'll be like Star Trek.
You'll get a file and you'll be able to, yeah.
Just get the parts
Why?
they
Because
need.
humans.
So Shawn, do you think that Games Workshop are kind of front running this trend by having a subscription model of a kind of subscription model of shows rather than not just
they're not dumb.
models?
Like they've obviously thought this through. It seems like they're jumping the gun, but they probably just figured, hey, our fan base, a certain percentage will just do whatever. It's like my fan base. I can put whatever all bollocks I want on my channel, and 200 people will eat it up. And Games Workshop, same thing. Anything we put on, 1 million people will buy it. What shall we do? So yeah, it's early, it's formative. Maybe they should have waited a couple of years, but don't worry, they'll catch up. And I think with 3D printing, it'll be the same thing too. They've already thought about it. At some point in time, you'll probably be able to buy files to print your army.
When I think about it, Shawn, I think of something like Netflix. And when it come out, it was like, well, why do I want to pay for Netflix when I can just find a dodgy, I can find a dodgy channel somewhere and download or stream it somewhere else. And I think it's almost like the same thing happening now. But eventually it becomes much easier just to subscribe to Netflix.
If you make it convenient, you give people what they want in the service, and you make it all encompassing, so it's actually got everything you want, then people don't need to go elsewhere.
No. Well, same with Spotify and, download and pirating music. It's the same thing, isn't it? Owning the IP is almost everything, right? And
Now,
enforcing it.
If I can draw some eyeballs to what's on the screen right now, this is potentially, the way I've heard it described, a curveball from Mantic, in that I've heard them described as Stormcast orcs by people who saw the pre-release pictures.
Okay.
And at the moment, there's just a few grainy images going around that people have taken from, I believe it was at the big Clash of Kings tournament. They had a Mantic evening where they showed a few pictures off, and some people took sneaky pictures. And they're big, armoured orcs that came out of some mystical hole in the universe. A bit Stormcast-like, but they're orcs.
Manticore,
let's zoom in. That is a bit of a Manticore-like creature that the orc is riding on. Some people have called them a little bit World of Warcraft-like as well in their appearance, these orcs. Very big, over-the-top weapons. Thoughts?
Yeah, cool. Bit cartoony, I guess, right? I'd like to see a 360. Yeah, is that to maybe replace like a Maw Crusher or something?
Well, but they have been delving into more original races, Mantic, over the last few years, rather than just not exactly ripping off, because obviously GW didn't just come up with the concept of an undead army, but obviously Mantic were pretty much founded on cheaper models for Warhammer, and then since Warhammer isn't the same thing that it used to be anymore, they started coming out with their own armies once they've already got their inbuilt audience. Now this is a bit of a change in direction just based on these models, a little bit less realistic scale, like you said, a little bit more cartoonish. So we'll see how that fits in and what the rest of the range looks like, but it's something to keep our eye on anyway.
Nice. Well, last week we saw the halfling range that Mantic have been putting out. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen those, Shawn, but we were pretty impressed.
I have a halfling commission coming up.
Nice.
And the guy wants me to make the bases and movement trays adaptable to several systems, which is quite a puzzle, but a very exciting puzzle as well.
Nice. Awesome, man.
Now, speaking of excitement, shall we move on to what Mr. Remington has been waiting for? We're going to have a worldwide painting pioneer and supremo analysing and probing in detail the paint jobs of Mr. Remington Steele.
Oh, God, be kind.
Let the probing begin.
Be kind.
So before we zoom in, you can have a bit of a far out look at just the colour scheme here. We will be zooming in for some heavy, better than the human eye scrutiny in a minute.
No zooming in. Come on, man. This is what he does to me, Shawn. He zooms in like until like the photograph is just stupendously big, like A1 poster size, and it's like impossible for it to be really that good. But you know,
it's a problem.
You know, what's your first impression, Shawn? First impression. Do I get a second?
Am I looking at the
YouTube
screen?
You're looking at YouTube.
I'm looking at YouTube now. There's probably a delay. I'm still seeing the Mantic figures.
Oh, they'll be gone in a second.
Yeah, so early on when I was starting my company, I had what I called cool mini or not syndrome, where cool mini was very popular and people thought that's just how things looked when they were painted. And I was like, no, that's like 50 hours on that one figure, you know? So there's a lot of customer education that goes on. So I have that too, where someone will say, oh no, I just want the tabletop standard. And then they go in with like a magnifying glass. It's rare, like 98% of my things go off without a hitch. Okay, let's take a look. Now I'm seeing something. Let me see if I can get better resolution here. All right. First off, I like to look for contrasts with when somebody just picks their colors. So you've got a really nice cold-warm contrast on this model. The troll is very cold. Sure, his underskin is a little creamy there, but the blue is definitely ice cold. And the gut plate, the orange, the eye is really drawn to that. Obviously, it's very bright, it's very warm, it's a really interesting feature. So as an experienced painter, in terms of just you know, your composition, I would say that drawing the orange up into the rider was a really good idea. And you also have to have light dark contrast, which you definitely have here. So that's very nice. I'd have to actually look at the model to see the detail on it. But I see that you've layered up some very basic techniques to have a really good effect. And I definitely don't see rookie mistakes. For example, dry brushing or light marks where there should be shadows there, like in the teeth. The teeth are picked out really nice. If I were to offer a small criticism, it would be his club. And I can't tell, but it looks like there's sheets of metal hammered onto the club.
Yes.
And you've really used the same value and tone and color through that entire feature. So I think you'd definitely be better off making that metal very dark,
Maybe
because
rust
usually
it up a
people,
bit.
maybe so, yeah, and that would play as long as you didn't use the exact oranges on the gut plate and the rider, you would be fine doing that.
Nice.
And so, yeah, based on this, I would definitely have you on my team.
Oh my God, my
Yeah.
dreams just come true. Wow, man.
Or my standards are super low. No, you're doing really good, and you can definitely paint level 3, level 4, and I'll bet you with just a little bit of effort, which you probably and a skill you probably already have,
Yeah.
you can get up into those higher levels as well.
Wow. Wow, I'm so
And
stoked.
so, yeah, no, your work is great. And
That's
of
so
course, if
cool,
you're
man.
actually going to do this professionally yourself, which you may, do you have a commission business?
Well, I think I've probably painted about 20 armies, and I've probably sold 10 of them. I've sold 10 of them just to raise some funds when I was really poor, a couple of years ago, and but now,
Oh, yeah, okay.
you know, but now I've got I don't, now I'm in a different position, and now I'm just painting just because I love the models, and I don't want to
Right.
sell them right now, but yeah,
Oh, I hate desperation cells.
yeah, me
The
too.
secondary market for painted miniatures is just depressing.
I,
It's so bad.
I had
People are like, "I'll pay retail value for the models themselves."
I had an
And
all
the army
metal
that you paint assembled and painted up.
I had an
I'm
all
just like, "Oh,
metal
brutal."
Yeah, Sean, I had a dwarf army that was all metal, and it was all Marauder miniatures, all the troll slays, everything, and I had to let that go. And you 2 weeks later, I saw the same army being sold on eBay. I was gutted, mate. There you go.
Oh,
Need
geez, your work actually is really good.
Yeah, this one's actually finished. The other one is still work in progress, I guess.
Oh yeah, you hammered it, man. You did great. Yeah. Oh, I would love nothing more than to have you appear in Salt Lake City.
Oh my God, that's so cool. As endorsed by Sean from Blue Table Painting,
Yeah.
Remington Steel. There you go.
Now, when it loads up for everybody, what I've put on the screen now is from a member of our Andy and Rem Show Discord community. This is from Cedar, and these are some animal warriors from Burrows and Badgers for us to critique. Well, maybe not with the same eye of scrutiny that we were casting over Mr. Remington's work, because obviously, to be nice to our audience, we don't have to be nice to Rem. But I think these are pretty tasty looking. Nice tuftage on the base, if that's not a word it is now.
I see on your comments, somebody says, I loved Blue Table bat reps
Yep.
he used to do. So fun to watch. Why doesn't do them anymore? It's laziness. I don't gotta do them anymore. And also depression. Like when I watch all these other channels, I'm just like, my stuff is sucks so bad. But yeah, I hope to do them again in the future.
The technology doesn't always make it engaging. At the end of the day, it's the personality.
Yeah, well, I see them and they give these overhead shots and you can't see a
Yeah.
dang thing. You can't
Yeah.
tell what's going on. And they
Agreed.
never stop to explain to like someone who's trying to learn. They never explain like what just happened.
Yeah.
But why did you move there?
Yeah.
Like, what is your strategy? And I think that's something I could definitely bring to the table.
Well, this is why the battle reports on my channel are obviously some of the finest around, because they're all just still images, tactical, in-depth analysis, deep probing looks into the strategies involved.
Boy, you two sure do love probing.
There is a lot of probing on this channel. The final picture we're going to look at here, obviously...
And by the way, on my end, the bunnies and burrows stuff just came through. And they look really great. I love anthropomorphic animals. I just painted up a bunch of 3D printed platypus men from a sculptor called Cobra Mode. And you should look those guys up.
Platypus men. Okay.
Oh, they're incredible. These models are amazing. They're going to be in the game. The D&D game I'm running up at Valhalla week.
What are they?
Hey, we should do another interview up at Valhalla.
Oh, it'd be amazing. I'd love that. What are the skills of a platypus man? Are they kind of skilled? Are they quick? Are they strong? Are they anvils? Are they
Well,
hammers?
they don't. Yeah, they're just 3D prints meant for the art, so they
Sure.
don't really give you stats for them. But in my game, I'm going to give them a power, and the power is they affect you psychically, and they make you your status friendly. No
Nice.
matter what you try and do, you just sort of, and that's how they rob you basically. Like if the party's not aware of what's going on, they're gonna just rob them blind. So they're a weird creature, like a rust monster that sort of attacks you on this different level.
I don't think I've ever
And
seen a duck-billed
and if you
platypus in
kill
real
them,
life.
you're cursed.
Oh wow. What's the curse?
Things don't go right for you after that.
I think that's
So
how most
every die
curses
that you
work.
roll, you have to roll 2 and take the lowest one.
So the picture we're looking at here, work in progress shot, obviously, of my Caradron Overlords. I just want to prove to people that I can actually apply paint to an airship. After buying some years ago, and after painting all the individual little sky dwarves, couldn't bear to look at them ever again, and ended up having to sell the rest of the army before it was painted. So this time, when I've got back in, brush strokes have been applied, and here is the evidence, folks. So you can look forward to seeing that army on the table soon.
Nice. I love how they reinvented for Age of Sigmar. It's absolutely brilliant. And to be able to sort of detect with that old school knowledge. Like Lumineth Realm Lords are a lot like Lothern Sea Guard.
Yep.
For example.
With croquet mallets.
Yeah. I could have done without some of the aesthetic, but they did what they did, and they obviously are very detailed. Detail creep is a real problem too, on my end, because it takes twice as long to paint up one of those new spearmen than it does to paint up one of the old high elf spearmen. Like there's just so much on them, but can you raise your prices double? So that's kind of the issue.
What I want to know is how many pouches and elements of danglage can one soldier really have?
Well, a lot, evidently. This actually started, the detail creep, as I call it, started with Empire. The old Warhammer Fantasy Empire guys started having like birds and lunches, and they would keep their powder in little containers. And I was just like, oh, there's like time and a half the things to paint on these guys now. They're not simple. Orcs are going there. Like I noticed the new orcs for 40K. I was looking at them, and a guy, he had a hole in his pants. And I'm like, guess what? You got to paint that hole. Mm-hmm. You got to paint that little, so you got to have an extra stage to handle every single model just to put a little dot of orc skin inside of that hole. So it's affecting my industry.
Shawn, do you know if you paint an army for your company, or your company paints an amazing army, right? And you're so proud of it, and you show it off, and then soon after you get 2 or 3 orders that come in, and they say, "Can we have the same one? can you do it again?" Well, how do you feel when
that happens? Yeah, I get that all the time.
Is it like, oh
I feel successful.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. What's even better than that, though, is having a customer come back and say, I'm ready for a part 2. I recently had a customer from 2005 come back.
Wow.
And that is just like, that's through the roof, man. And when I get those people back, it's great. Shawn, another great feeling is when somebody sends in an army and there's 3 guys partially painted in it. I love that.
Well, as a
they
reference,
tried and realized they couldn't do it.
What's the furthest?
Like, awesome.
What's the furthest afar your customers have come from?
Have
you
had Australia, I guess.
Wow.
I mean, it's all the typical customers. I don't have any clients from China,
Sure.
you know. Just UK, Germany, I have a guy from Finland that's been with me like a zillion years now, and Matthias is his name. So I've won. My company and myself, I've transcended. I've got these wonderful things. I saw all different versions of reality that I could have had. I picked one that I liked. But I'm still excited for new things, new goals that I have, which I explained earlier, but also very happy where I'm at. And I don't got to fight it so hard. And
Yeah.
that was really what came out of all that is I got some really amazing clients from all around the world. They're
Yeah.
really great that I just ask, how's it going? What is it like to live in Finland? You know, and it's really nice, really great. And like
It,
you guys coming and contacting me, nobody contacts me and wants to interview me. You know, it's it's like Luke on the island. It really is. When I watched that show, I was like, I totally relate to this guy. He's like, I built the Jedi Temple and it burned down. I built the Jedi Temple again and they burned it down. I built it again and now it's the ground. Now I live on this. And then he like sucks that creature's boob or whatever, and just like, yeah, I'm living off the land. And I'm like, oh, this guy makes perfect sense.
I've been having an interesting thought since you said it's always a special moment when someone sends an army for a commission and there's like 3 partially painted miniatures in it. Makes me think, what other professions could that apply to? If you think like a surgeon, somebody comes in and they've like half removed one of their own kidneys, and then you have to finish the job and you think, isn't that cute? They tried their best, but now let the professionals take over.
I think a plumber is what you're searching for. They come in, they see the duct tape, they see that it's still leaking. They're like, oh, he tried to be a man and just do it. And now he had to call a pro. I think so. And I say that as a joke. Obviously, it's a little cruel to say it, but it's nice. It's validating because a lot of times people are like, oh, I could. If anyone looks at it and goes, oh, I could just do that, then obviously, why would I exist? And then, of course, and some people they just never get around to even trying. And a year later, they're like, oh, I'm never really going to paint this. Oh, but now I have this windfall. I got a bonus at work. I can finally get my whatever's done. So I get a lot of orders like that, which is nice.
it sounds like, Shawn, that your company now has been in like fully free-form pivot mode, and you don't have to take on staff like full time. Are we living in a freelance society now, do you think? You know?
Right. Yes, I would love to talk about this briefly. I saw this great YouTube video and first off, YouTube, that sort of thing it's incredible. The sum of human knowledge with everybody being able to access it and be searchable, it's not done. Like society is still going to change for the better because of that. We'll get past all of this nonsense. So anyway, she had a bunch of sugar cubes stacked up in a big pyramid, and she said it used to be hierarchical. Like one person at the top was making all the money. Finally, the grunts down there sweating it out for a pretty low wage. And then she poured liquid into the pan underneath this pyramid and it started to dissolve. And I believe that accessibility to knowledge is going to change how we do things, and is going to get rid of a lot of these pyramids that we've grown up with, that we're used to, and it's going to make the world into something collaborative. And I'm very excited for that. I'm on board with that. I'm already adjusting my business model and how I do business to reflect that more. And I think the strength is going to be in the breadth and meaningfulness of your collaborations. And amazingly, somehow in this new system, you're going to be able to own a home, feed yourself, not have so much stress, and a lot of exciting things are going to come out of it. One more thought. I saw a blurb with Elon Musk, and he was talking about work. That in the future, because of AI and robotics and stuff, we might not have work or jobs as we know it, and we're going to have to change somehow as a society, or there's going to be real problems. And I'm like, oh, that is true. What if robots came down and just did all the jobs all of a sudden? What would you even do? What would you want to do? And I think that question's coming up. And he said there's gonna have to be some kind of universal basic income.
Mm.
And that's a bit of a hot topic. And I'm not coming out saying it should be done in a certain way or even should be done. But I think that something is going to happen. And it's going to be the younger generation. Like people sort of badmouth millennials here and there. And I'm just like, yeah, you better shut up about them millennials, because they're going to sort things out in a really wonderful, inventive way. And I'm looking forward to my kids supporting me. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to totally live in their basement and paint miniatures for fun.
Shawn, everything you've just described, I read as a child in 2000 AD comics and Judge Dredd. I don't know if you're familiar
Oh,
with
great.
Of course, like Mega City 1, you've got this overpopulated in a small space. Robots are doing all the work, so you get boredom set in, you get mass crime, you get some, people doing really kooky hobbies, like flying off skyscrapers. You get the fatters whose hobby is just to eat, all the time, right? So could we potentially see some kind of apocalyptic Mega City 1 thing going on in planet Earth?
No, I don't think so. I think for me, over the last 7 years, the big question is what is the nature of this reality? And that's a really big question to ask, because if you figure that out, then you can be in harmony with it and everything will make sense. Otherwise, you're just punching the river and nothing ever changes. So I have a much more positive view of things, because I believe the nature of reality is abundance. Look out at the night sky. What do you see? So many planets. Like Darth Vader was not very ambitious. He only wanted to rule the galaxy as father and son. Really? One galaxy? When there's like, just that we've observed, there's like a billion galaxies. I don't know the number, it's huge. And if you spent every second of your life without sleeping from age 0 to age 100, and you saw one planet every second, you wouldn't be done with the Milky Way galaxy by the time you died. That's how much is out there. There's so much, so much. So the real thing that's rare is humans, is new ideas, is some kind of excitement happening, to be interested in something. So yeah, I'd love your Judge Dredd thing, but I just think Judge Dredd world will have a lot more gardens and be nicer.
Yeah, let's hope so.
On that note, I think we should start drawing this one to a close. I'm sure we'll get you back on again, and we won't wait like 6 years to try again this time, after the failed attempt previously. So you can look forward to getting some more 15 minutes of fame in a few months' time, hopefully.
Shawn, we'd love to have you back. And in fact, for a number of shows, we did a fantasy adventure called The Forest of Rem, where and we also did one called Witch Coven, where I was the dungeon master for that. It's well thought of as one of the greatest ever fantasy adventures ever to be broadcast on YouTube, and it would be so cool if you could be part of one in the future, maybe a role-playing adventure on the Andy and Rem show. And you could be, you could be the DM, or you could be, a character. I don't know, whatever you want. It could be great.
Well, I love to DM.
Nice.
I'm up for anything, guys. I'm so grateful and delighted that you included me on this, that you thought about me and gave me a chance to get on the stage.
And nice.
The audience can see your wonderful picture now on the title screen there, Shawn. So It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
All right.
A dream come true, really.
In fact, Shawn, if you would like to start conjuring up in your mind some lyrics for a song in a minute, because we're going to call on you to perform shortly. But before that, I'm going to personally take some time out to thank the people who keep the lights on at this channel so we can act as a lighthouse, guiding people away from the rocks of hobby misery and towards enlightenment and joy and smooth sailing in their hobby. Following people who are Patreon supporters, thanks to Graham, Guy, Roshi, Brad, Kim, Raccoon, John, Cedar, Simon, Nippleless, Kevin, and David. Very big thanks to all of you, being top-notch human beings. So, Shawn, if you're ready, would you like to sing us a bit of a song?
Andy and Rem, you thought it'd be fun to mess around in your mortal life, but now you're burning in hell. I'm gonna do things to you that you'll remember for always. For some reason, I have antenna instead of horns. You know what this is. That's it. That's my song.
That's amazing.
Very well. On that note, I think all that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.
It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show on your screens tonight. It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show for your home delight. We're talking about Age of Sigmar and anything else that is cool. Talking about Warhammer Fantasy, it's easy to learn